Lately I felt the itch to go on good old-fashioned overanalyzing rants about fantasy weapons. So I went to Mississauga and visited 2 stores that have plenty of those. This is part 1 of several videos you will see from that. Keep in mind, most of these are wall hangers, not quote-unquote battle-ready. And although I'm using them as props to get a feel for real-life practicality, this is not a review of individual products as such. Oh no! But of the original fantasy design as a concept. Either way, if you're interested in any of these as a wall hanger, the links will be in the description below. And no, this is not sponsored. When it comes to classic heroic fantasy, what's more iconic than Conan? Okay, so it's interesting to actually handle Conan, sort of. Talked about it just by the looks of it, and my goodness, this is a bit weird. It's basically sized like an arming sword, like a single-handed sword, but it has a bit too much handle for that. Interestingly enough, it's not as heavy as I expected. I mean, yes, it's way heavier than historical swords, but I was kind of, at this point, I was kind of expecting it to be such a clunker. I wasn't able to weigh it there, and Medieval Depot's website doesn't show the weight, but I'm convinced it's substantially less than the 3.5 kilograms or well over 7 pounds that the original weighs. The guard and pommel on this one are not made of solid bronze, but aluminum with a bronze finish, so that saves quite a bit of weight. And perhaps the blade itself is also lighter. The dimensions, on the other hand, in terms of overall length and blade length, are the same. If you made it this way, Arnie could definitely use it. Obviously. Yeah, it's not that bad, actually. It's just you have no reach compared to a regular longsword, and you would not want to fight with this with one hand. And the handle is pretty much completely round. So edge alignment, But how can you not like it? You know, like the design, it's so iconic, quintessential 80s fantasy, and I still like it. There's just something about it, you know, just the look. So if you just want something that's cool, I can't argue with that. The pommel is actually more comfortable than I would have expected. Interesting. I don't mind that at all. There's some pommels that just kind of interfere with how you're handling it and are just uncomfortable, but this is pretty cool. I have more of a problem with this actually, because it's like, you kind of need to put the hand there because there's so little space. How did Arnie even fit his hands on there? It looks cramped for sure, but not any more so, even though I'm shorter. If anything, it almost seems as if he had just a tiny bit more space on the handle. Either way, after this hands-on experience, I'm still sticking to my redesign idea from 2017 that simply consisted of lengthening it to make it more practically effective. I have to admit, aesthetically, I prefer the proportions of the original, but this would just be more functional. Making it longer, of course, would make it even heavier, so you'd have to mitigate that. Perhaps by making the guard and pommel hollow and by giving the blade a distal taper. And then there's the father's sword. I prefer the handle shape on this one here, actually. It still needs to be longer to be perfectly comfortable, but that feels better overall. That pommel is not bad either. That's where a lot of the weight comes from, this elaborate guard here, which looks cool. I mean, fantasy. Original, edgy fantasy. I don't want to swing it too much because there's a little bit of movement going on here. It feels like it wants to be a bigger sword than it is. Like it's definitely arming sword length. In fact, there are single-handed swords that are longer than this, but it's ambitious. It wants to be a big boy. And it is, kind of. Huh. Interesting to finally have my hands on these, because if you only go by pictures, there's only so much you can say. So the Kurgan sword from Highlander, that's also one that I made a video about way back, probably 2014. This is not as weird as the movie prop was, because he just puts it together from separate pieces. Like, the blade is made of multiple pieces, which is, yeah, you would literally need magic to make that work, which they don't have. Well, are immortals magical? Sort of, right? But not that kind of magic. I don't think they can imbue their swords with some kind of power, so that wouldn't work, but this is one piece, so that's not a problem. Now, he has these parrying hooks here that he can extend with a push of a button. That's actually sort of historical, like there were parrying daggers like that, where you extend parrying hooks with a push of the spring-loaded button. Note that these were parts of the blade that folded out. Not that such a design is terribly strong either, but definitely more functional than cramming a spring-loaded mechanism into a guard. It makes sense for rapiers and such. Not really heavier blades, because if you try to catch something like that, just because it needs to be able to fold in, it just makes it weaker. These, I'm assuming they're fixed?
No, I do believe that these can be adjusted, but you'd have to unscrew it here, I believe. And then it would be manually, like, adjusted out. Transformed Kurgan sword. There is a point to it, or rather two, because you could catch something here. A blade, if you get it here, then you have a pretty good hold on it and can control the opponent's blade. So that's actually a smart idea. I don't mind that at all. It should probably be permanent rather than foldable or otherwise movable. It just makes it stronger. What I find interesting is I was expecting this to be quite heavy just because of how bulky the guard is, but I guess it's hollow. I mean, you can even look in there. I don't know if I can show that on camera, but where those parrying hooks, I'm just going to call them, where they come out, you're going to see that this entire piece seems to be hollow. That would save a lot of weight. Not as strong as a regular guard that's smaller but solid. This is actually not bad at all. This feels better than I expected. I was looking at that and expecting it to be a complete clunker, but it's not bad, actually. In terms of visual design, the guard in particular I think looks great. They made it aesthetically more appealing by adding more depth to the shape. The same can't be said about the grip and pommel. It's just a simple cylinder and sphere, basically. As we were talking earlier, we were talking about like swords with moving parts or LEDs and other crazy wacky things that are going on with it. It's one of the great design challenges that we face when we're trying to make something as faithful as possible, but then having the real world constraints of how do we make this in real life so that it can be as practical to store it away and for a person to be able to transform it themselves with it still being durable. So as you said in the series, Kurgan can press a button and the blade transforms. This one you have to manually just pull them apart. We didn't want to have too many elements working in this blade because already we have to accommodate the, we want to call it parrying spikes, I guess? Hooks, parrying hooks, sure. So just being able to accommodate that, you had to keep this area pretty much hollowed so that it can, you know, shift between the positions. But yeah, overall, it's a perfectly functional sword. Again, in one piece. He's got this suitcase where the blade is made of, I think, 3 pieces that he slides together. I don't even know how he fixes them because he just slides them together. It's like magnets? That's not exactly strong enough for fighting, but yeah. Someone had a wacky idea and it's an 80s movie, so what more can you say?